Welcome to Daily Review, your daily dose of literary exploration. We dive into books that spark curiosity and ignite growth. While our passion often leads us to nonfiction reads that empower and improve your life, no book is off limits. From gripping thrillers to insightful memoirs and compelling fiction to historical accounts, we're here to share and discuss all the interesting reads we discover. Tune in for your next great book idea. Thank you so much for tuning in to Daily Review. We truly appreciate you joining us for your daily dose of literary exploration. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to share these amazing books with you. If you're enjoying what you hear, please consider taking a moment to subscribe, rate, like, and comment on any of the platforms you're listening from. This really helps support our channel and allows us to get better and bring you even more great content. If today's review sparked your interest and you're ready to dive into a copy of the book, please consider using the link in our description to make your purchase. Not only does it make it easy for you to get your hands on the book, but it also directly supports our channel and the author, allowing us to keep bringing you more great content. Thanks again for being a part of the Daily Review community. Now let's get into today's deep dive. We're exploring some really mind-bending research today. It's all about how big data is giving us this radical new view on human nature, on society itself. We'll look at its surprising power, but also where it falls short and some of the tricky ethical stuff it brings up. So let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered if what people say they think or what they say they do is actually the truth? I mean, our gut feeling often feels right, doesn't it?
It really does. We tend to trust our intuition or what people tell us in surveys or just what we observe day to day.
But what if those methods, even our best ones, have been missing something huge, like a massive blind spot in how we understand ourselves?
Well, that's exactly the problem. Traditional ways of studying human thought, human behavior, they've always grappled with this thing called the savage trade-off. It's a fundamental challenge.
Savage trade-off. Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. So on one side, you've got the sheer richness of human thought. Think about your own stream of consciousness. It's messy, complex, full of nuance, right?
Totally. Hard to pin down.
Exactly. It's incredibly rich, but it's also really hard for a scientist to, quantify, to turn into neat data points you can analyze statistically. It's just not easily tractable for testing hypotheses rigorously.
So you get the depth, but you can't really measure it easily.
Right. Then, on the other side of the trade-off, you try to make it measurable. You focus on things like, say, reaction times to seeing a word, or how much someone sweats their skin response when shown a picture.
Things you can put a number on.
Precisely. You get nice quantifiable data, perfect for statistics. But you've often stripped away all that complex texture, that richness of the actual thought or feeling. You've boiled it down to maybe one number.
So you lose the nuance.
You lose the nuance. Even fancy brain scans, neuroimaging, they can show you where in the brain something is happening, but not really what the thought is, not the content.
Okay, so that's the trade-off. Richness versus being able to actually measure and analyze it.
That's one big hurdle. And then there's another problem, identified by Nobel winners Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They called it the law of small numbers.
The law of small numbers. Right, this is the idea that we tend to think even a tiny group of people will perfectly represent everyone.
Exactly. It's a common fallacy, even among scientists who should know better. You think, I'll just ask a few people and assume their answers reflect the whole population.
But that's often wrong, especially if the sample isn't representative.
Terribly wrong. Scientists often underestimate just how many people they need in a study to confidently say something about, all Americans, let alone all humans. And it gets worse when the samples are just convenient.
Like asking college students who need beer money.
That's the classic example. Psychology studies relying on college sophomores. These small, convenient samples can lead to really flawed conclusions. And those conclusions sometimes become accepted wisdom for years.
You can see how that would happen.
Yeah.
And it connects to everyday life too, right? Like surveys.
Yeah.
How often do they really get at what people think or do? Especially on sensitive stuff.
Oh, absolutely. There's this huge issue called social desirability bias. Basically, people lie. They lie to make themselves look better.
Even if the survey is anonymous.
Even then, there was this great study back in 1950 in Denver. Researchers asked people about things like voting, giving to charity, even having a library card. Then they checked the official records.
How did they find?
Big discrepancies. People consistently exaggerated the good behaviors, like 83% said they were registered to vote, but only 69% actually were. 73% claimed they voted in the presidential election, but the record showed 61%.
Wow. Quite a gap.
Huge gaps. Mayoral election, 63% claimed versus 36% actual. Charitable giving, 67% claimed versus 33% actual. Even library cards, 20% claimed versus 13% actual. People just inflate the socially desirable stuff.
So lying is pretty common.
One expert estimated maybe a third of the time in daily life, and that definitely spills over into surveys. But it's not just lying to others, there's also self-deception.
Convincing ourselves we're better than we are.
Kind of. Not wanting to admit maybe you're, not nailing it in some area, or just genuinely believing you're above average.
Like those stats about engineers and professors.
Exactly. Over 40% of engineers at one company thought they were in the top 5%. Over 90% of professors think their work is above average. A quarter of high school seniors think they're in the top 1% for getting along with others.
Mathematically impossible, of course.
Right. So if you're already deceiving yourself, how can you be honest on a survey, even an anonymous one? Your own perception is skewed. Fundamentally, there's often no real incentive to tell the unvarnished truth, especially about sensitive things.
Okay, so traditional methods have these serious blind spots. The trade-off, small samples, people lying or deceiving themselves. So how do we get a clearer picture?
Well, this is where the big data comes in. It's being described as like a new kind of microscope or telescope. It offers a way to see things that were hidden before.
An unobstructed view into the mind, as some put it.
That's the idea. By capturing these digital traces of truth, people leave behind, often without thinking about it.
So the mission for us today, for you listening, is to explore how this explosion of digital data, especially things like Google searches, is just radically changing our understanding, giving us these aha moments about how the world really works beneath the surface.
Absolutely. The author of the book we're drawing from today mentioned he was pretty confident, maybe even a bit cocky as a grad student back in 2012. Thought he had the world figured out.
And then the data changed his mind.
Completely. He said his preconceptions got turned upside down. He actually ended up working at Google after they saw his early research on racism using search data. And the revelations just kept coming about mental health, sex, politics, you name it.
Okay, let's dive in. What is this new kind of data? It's not just more data, right? It's fundamentally different.
That's the crucial point. It's not just about size. It's about new kinds of information that we just didn't have before. This is the first big power, reimagining what even counts as data.
Can you give an example?
Think about Google itself. Its origin story is a story about reimagining data. Before Google, search engines like AltaVista or Lycos mostly just counted keywords.
Right, and people could game that system easily. Stuff keywords everywhere.
Totally. You'd search Bill Clinton and get some random anti-Clinton site or a joke page at the top just because they repeated his name a lot. It wasn't very useful.
I remember that. It's so frustrating.
Then Sergey Brin and Larry Page came along in '98. Their big idea wasn't just indexing more pages. It was using a different type of data, the links between pages.
Seeing links as votes.
Exactly, like votes of confidence.
Right.
If lots of credible sites linked to Bill Clinton's official website, that site was probably important and relevant. That link structure was the better data.
And that focus on better data, not just more data, is what made Google take off.
That's exactly right. It led to much better search results, and Google dominated within just a couple of years. The big data revolution really started with finding the right data, often data nobody thought of as data before.
Okay, that makes sense. So beyond search engines, what are some surprising examples of this reimagined data? You mentioned predicting pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, this is a really powerful example. Pancreatic cancer is incredibly deadly, maybe a 3% 5-year survival rate. But catching it early can make a huge difference, sometimes doubling survival chances.
But it's notoriously hard to detect early.
Very hard. So researchers at Columbia and Microsoft teamed up. They looked at anonymous search data from Bing. They found users who searched things like just diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Okay, so they identified people after diagnosis?
Right. Then they went back in time, looking at those same users' search histories before the diagnosis, searching for patterns of symptoms. They compared these patterns to people who didn't get diagnosed.
Looking for subtle clues hidden in their search history.
Exactly. And they found some striking patterns. For instance, searching for back pain. Then later searching for yellowing skin that sequence was a strong predictor. Much stronger than just searching for back pain alone.
Interesting.
Same with indigestion, then abdominal pain. Highly predictive together, but not indigestion on its own. This method could potentially identify 5 to 15% of cases very early with almost no false positives.
Wow. So the data teaches doctors something they couldn't easily see just from individual patients.
Precisely. No single doctor sees enough cases with that specific timing of symptoms to spot the pattern, but the aggregated, anonymous data reveals it. It's life-saving insight from an unexpected data source.
Truly amazing. Okay, what about predicting economic activity from space? Using nightlights. That sounds wild.
It does sound like sci-fi, but it addresses a real problem. Official economic data, GDP, in many developing countries is often unreliable or outdated. Lots of activity is off the books. Governments lack resources for good surveys.
So economists needed a different signal.
Right. J. Vernon Henderson and his colleagues had this brilliant, unconventional idea. Use satellite photos of nighttime lights taken by the U.S. Air Force as a proxy for economic output.
The logic being, less light means less economic activity. People cut back on electricity when times are tough.
That's the core idea, and they found strong correlations. Indonesia's lights dimmed significantly during the 1998 Asian financial crisis. South Korea's lights got 72% brighter between 92 and 08, matching its growth.
While North
Korea's lights actually decreased during that time, reflecting its struggles. And there's a dramatic example from Madagascar, a town called Ilataka.
What happened there?
It was basically just a truck stop until 1998, when huge ruby and sapphire deposits were found. Suddenly, it boomed into a trading hub, and the satellite photos showed an explosion of nightlight over the next 5 years, where there was previously almost none.
Incredible. So these unconventional data sources give a clearer, sometimes faster picture than official stats.
Especially in places where official data is weak, it helps fill in the gaps.
And then there's even more on-the-ground data, like using smartphone photos. The company premise.
Yeah, Joseph Reisinger, the founder, knew how frustrating bad economic data was. Nigeria, for instance, suddenly revised its GDP upward by 90% in 2014 because they just missed entire sectors before.
Yikes. So premise tries to get more real-time data.
Exactly. They pay local workers in developing countries to use smartphones to take pictures of specific things. Lines at gas stations, the amount and quality of fruit in supermarket bins, prices on shelves, same locations, repeatedly.
So turning photos into economic indicators.
Right. Analysts code the photos. Long gas lines, unripe or unavailable produce. Those are early warnings of trouble. Premise used this to spot food inflation in China in 2011 and deflation in 2012, way before the official numbers came out.
That's clever. Getting ahead of the curve.
They even helped estimate the size of the illegal cigarette market in the Philippines by having workers photograph cigarette packs to see how many lacked the official tax stamps. It just shows how creative data collection can uncover hidden economic realities.
It's amazing what you can learn by looking at the world differently. Let's switch gears. Horse racing. The story of Jeff Cedar and American Pharoah. How does that fit this idea of reimagining data?
Well, traditionally, horse racing was all about pedigree. Analyzing a horse's bloodline, its parents, grandparents, their racing records. The assumption was good genes equal a good racer.
Like in human sports, focusing on famous parents.
Exactly. But Cedar found that pedigree, while it matters a bit, explains surprisingly little about elite success. Most full siblings of Horse of the Year winners never win a major race. It's like banking on Magic Johnson's or Michael Jordan's kids becoming NBA superstars. It just didn't pan out that way. Pedigree wasn't the strong predictor people thought.
So Cedar looked elsewhere. What data did he focus on?
He was data-driven from the start, even before the internet really took off. He measured everything imaginable. Nostril size, turned out that didn't correlate with success. Muscle composition. But his big breakthrough, the thing that identified American Pharoah as special, was left ventricle size, the size of the main pumping chamber of the heart. American Pharoah's was enormous in the 99.61st percentile. All his vital organs were unusually large, actually.
So he found the right physical metric, something objective that others were ignoring because they were stuck on tradition.
Precisely. He focused on the physiology, the actual physical attributes, not just the history. He used to say, if I can see he's great, what do I care how he got there? It highlights that sometimes you don't need massive data, you need the right data. And you need to be willing to look for it in unconventional places.
That's a powerful lesson. Finding the signal in the noise. Even if the signal comes from an unexpected place, like heart size or satellite photos. Okay, this leads perfectly into the second major power of big data. Its role as a kind of digital truth serum.
Ah, yes, this is where things get really interesting and sometimes uncomfortable.
We talked about how people lie to surveys, to doctors, even to themselves. But Google seems different.
It is different. Think about the context. You're online, usually alone, maybe it's late at night, there's no human interviewer judging you. And critically, you have a direct personal incentive, to be honest.
You want the right information.
Exactly. You want useful search results. So you type in things you might never say out loud. I hate my boss. I am drunk. Maybe even deeply troubling things like, my dad hit me. It's an uncensored confessional in a way.
And these confessions leave digital traces of truth.
That's the idea. And sometimes those truths are pretty dark, revealing hidden prejudices, for instance.
Right, like during Obama's presidency. The common narrative was that America was moving past racism, becoming post-racial.
That was definitely the hope and what many academics and commentators believed. The author himself, as a grad student then, thought explicit racism was confined to a small fringe.
But the Google data.
The Google data told a starkly different story. Millions of, frankly, shockingly racist searches. Terms like the N-word KK used in conjunction with Obama's name.
How prevalent was this?
On election night 2008, for example, about 1 in 100 searches for Obama also included K, or the N-word. Searches for Stormfront, the white nationalist site, spiked 10 times their normal rate. In some places, nigger president was searched more often than first black president.
That's deeply disturbing. A huge disconnect between public discourse and private thoughts.
A profound disconnect. It revealed a level of hatred that just wasn't visible in traditional polls or surveys. And chillingly, the map of where these racist searches were highest in 2012.
Yes.
It correlated directly with Donald Trump's support in the 2016 Republican primaries. Those areas with more hidden racism, measured by searches 4 years earlier, were significantly more likely to back Trump.
Suggesting this hidden anger was just waiting for a voice.
It suggests, as the author put it, a nasty, scary, and widespread rage that was largely invisible to pollsters but clearly present and tapped into by Trump's campaign. It's a powerful example of search data revealing something crucial that surveys missed.
It really underscores how public statements, even anonymous ones, can mask private realities. What about other sensitive topics like sex? Surveys are notoriously bad there too.
Oh, absolutely terrible. The General Social Survey, a very respected source, found women report using condoms about 16% of the time, men report using them. Well, enough times to imply 1.6 billion condoms used per year compared to 1.1 billion based on women's reports.
The numbers don't add up.
They can't possibly add up for heterosexual encounters. Someone's not telling the truth. But Google searches or data from sites like Pornhub offer a much more candid look.
What kinds of insights emerge?
Some are culturally specific and surprising. Like in India, the top search starting "my husband wants" is apparently "my husband wants me to breastfeed him." Very unexpected.
Wow. And what about more general insecurities?
Well, for men, the data confirms the stereotype. Penis size is the biggest worry. No huge surprise there. But for women, it's vaginal odor.
Really? Odor, not appearance or size.
Odor is the top concern based on search volume. Women search almost as much about concerns with their genitals as men do, but odor is their number one issue by far. Very different from common assumptions.
That's surprising. What else?
There's something the data reveals called the generosity gap. Women search about twice as often as men for how to perform oral sex on the opposite gender.
Suggesting more effort to please their partner.
It seems that way. And here's a strange one. Men search just as much for how to perform oral sex on themselves as they do for how to give a woman an orgasm.
Okay. Something unexpected. What does that tell us?
It challenges stereotypes about sexual generosity, certainly, and maybe points towards underlying insecurities about attractiveness or performance, possibly contributing to a lack of sex for some. If people worried less about certain things, maybe there'd be more intimacy overall. It's speculative, but the data raises questions.
It absolutely does. So private searches reveal these hidden worries and desires. What about regret? Like regretting having children. That's taboo.
Extremely taboo. But the data shows an interesting pattern. Before having kids, people are about 7 times more likely to search about regretting not having them, fear of missing out.
Okay, but after?
After having kids, searches for regretting having children become 3.6 times more common than searches for regretting not having them. And these aren't usually questions, they're statements. I regret having children, typed into the void.
A digital confession.
A confession. It's a small fraction of parents, obviously, but it reveals a significant hidden sentiment that rarely gets voiced openly.
This really contrasts with social media, doesn't it? Where everyone seems to be presenting their best life. Facebook posts often seem like the opposite of a truth serum.
Exactly. Social media is often about curating an idealized image. You have a strong incentive to look good, successful, happy. Your name is attached to it.
Like the example of The Atlantic versus the National Enquirer.
Perfect example. Both have similar actual readership, judging by circulation in Google searches, but on Facebook, The Atlantic, the highbrow magazine, gets maybe 30 times more likes and shares than the tabloid Inquirer.
Because people want to be seen liking the sophisticated magazine.
Precisely. They share what aligns with the image they want to project, not necessarily what they secretly read on the commute or at the checkout line.
That makes perfect sense. It reminds me of the uproar when Facebook introduced the news feed back in 2006. People were furious.
They really were. Creepy, stalker-esque, invasion of privacy. There was a huge student group protesting it. People said they hated it.
But what did Facebook's internal data show?
The digital truth serum told a different story. Mark Zuckerberg saw that time spent on the site, page views. They skyrocketed after Newsfeed launched. People were publicly complaining but privately hooked. They were spending way more time scrolling through their friends' updates.
Their actions revealed the truth, even if their words didn't.
Their actions did. The data knew them better than they knew themselves in that instance.
It's the same pattern with Netflix cues, isn't it? People add sophisticated documentaries.
Aspirational films, foreign movies. Their queue looks very highbrow. But what do they actually click play on?
Probably comedies and action flicks.
Often, yes. Lowbrow comedies, romances. Netflix learn quickly. Don't rely on the queue. Recommend based on what people actually watch. The algorithms know your real tastes perhaps better than your aspirational self does.
So this gap between what we say and what we do, what we aspire to versus what we actually consume or believe, big data makes that gap incredibly visible.
It really does. Whether it's stalking friends on Facebook while saying it's creepy, buying products made in sweatshops while condemning them, listening to Howard Stern while claiming you don't, reading 50 Shades of Grey secretly, or even supporting a political candidate like Trump whose appeal was initially underestimated by polls relying on what people said, the digital truth serum reveals the underlying reality.
Okay, so we've seen how big data reimagines what counts as data and how it acts as a truth serum. What's the third power? You mentioned zooming in.
Right. The third power is the ability to zoom in with incredible granularity on small subsets of the population or specific geographic areas. This lets us find patterns that get totally lost in broad averages.
How does this help understand how identities or preferences form, like baseball fandom?
Yeah, that's a fun example. Using large fan data sets, researchers found a really strong predictor for which baseball team a boy will support for life.
What is it?
It's whether his preferred team won the World Series when he was around 7 or 8 years old. That seems to be a critical imprinting age for boys' baseball loyalty.
So if you were a kid in New York in 69 or 86,
And the Mets won, you were significantly more likely to become a lifelong Mets fan if you were around that age. The data shows clear peaks in Mets fandom for men born around 1962 and 1978.
fascinating. Does it work the same way for girls?
Interestingly, no. For women, the peak age for forming baseball loyalty seems to be later, around 22. The granular age-specific data reveals these different developmental windows.
Incredible specificity. What about something more fundamental like political views? Is there an imprint age there too?
Apparently, yes. Large studies suggest that age 18 is the single most important year for shaping lifelong political leanings.
So who was president when you turn 18 matters?
It seems to have a measurable effect. People born in 1941 who turned 18 during Eisenhower's popular Republican presidency showed about a 10-point lifetime boost in Republican identification compared to similar groups.
Yeah, for Democrats.
Those born in 1952 who came of age during the Kennedy-Johnson era, even bleeding into Nixon's time, which had a complex political vibe, they showed about a 7-point lifetime advantage for Democrats. These early political climates leave a lasting mark.
Wow. So our formative years really do shape us deeply. Now let's tackle a huge question. American opportunity. Is it really the land of opportunity? Broad stats suggest maybe not as much as we think compared to, say, Canada or Denmark.
Right. The overall numbers for economic mobility, a poor kid's chance of becoming rich, aren't stellar for the U.S. compared to some other wealthy nations, about 7.5% here versus 11 or 13% elsewhere.
But does big data offer a different perspective? I know Rod Shetty's work using tax records is the same as here.
It's groundbreaking. Chetty's team got access to basically all U.S. tax records going back to 1996. That's over 1 billion data points. And they realized the power wasn't just in confirming national averages, but in zooming in.
What did they find when they zoomed in geographically?
Huge variation. They found America isn't one single place regarding opportunity. It's like a collection of societies. In San Jose, California, a poor kid's chance of becoming rich is almost 13% better than Denmark.
Okay, but elsewhere.
But just down the road, relatively speaking, in Charlotte, North Carolina, that chance plummets to just 4.4%. These massive differences were invisible in the national averages.
So what factors seem to drive higher mobility in certain places?
They found correlations with things like higher spending on education, more religious communities, lower crime rates, and fewer single mothers in an area. It suggests the local environment, the community you grew up in, plays a massive role. It's not just about individual grit.
That really shifts the focus, doesn't it? From just individual effort to the importance of community structure and local opportunities.
Yeah.
What about tax cheating? Did Chetty's data shed light on that too?
It did, in a really clever way. They looked at a very specific group, self-employed people with one child reporting exactly $9,000 in income.
Why $9,000 exactly?
Because that was the income level that maximized the Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC, for that group, getting them the biggest possible government check, around $3,377.
So if lots of people reported exactly that amount, it might suggest manipulation.
Yeah. It strongly suggests strategic reporting, yeah. And again, huge geographic variation. In Miami, an incredible 30% of people in that category reported exactly $9,000.
30%.
Compared to where?
Compared to only 2% in Philadelphia. And the key predictors for this $9,000 reporting, lots of other people qualifying for EITC nearby, and crucially, lots of tax preparers nearby.
Ah, so it's not necessarily about honesty, but about knowing how to game the system or having someone who knows how. That seems to be a major factor. It suggests many people might optimize or even cheat a little if they knew how or had easy access to professional help that encouraged it. It's about knowledge and incentives, not just inherent morality.
That's a subtle but important distinction. Okay, one more example of zooming in. Success or notability. How does geography influence who becomes famous enough for, say, a Wikipedia page?
This was a study the author was involved in. They looked at baby boomers and where they were born. The odds of getting a Wikipedia entry varied dramatically by county.
Like Boston versus?
Suffolk County, Massachusetts, Boston. Your odds were about 1 in 748. Pretty high. But in West Virginia, it dropped to about 1 in 4,496. Huge difference.
What predicted higher notability rates?
More college graduates in the county was a big one. Early exposure to innovation seemed key, especially growing up near college towns for things like music or business. And another really strong factor, the proportion of immigrants.
Immigrants or children of immigrants.
Children of immigrants specifically were significantly overrepresented among notable Americans. Think of famous white baby boomers, people like Oliver Stone, Sandra Bullock, Julianne Moore. Many had foreign-born mothers, at a rate much higher than the national average. It suggests something about the immigrant experience or the environment they create fosters high achievement.
That's fascinating. So places like New York City might be good for generating fame, even if not average middle-class success.
Exactly. NYC isn't always the easiest place for average outcomes, but it's a powerhouse for producing notable figures, and sometimes you see hyper-specialization.
Like the Minnesota example.
Right. Roseau County, Minnesota. Rural, few immigrants, no big universities, but a surprisingly high notability rate, 1 in 740. Why? Hockey players. They had 9 notable people, all pro hockey players, likely due to amazing local youth programs. It shows how environment, exposure, and sometimes intense local specialization drive success.
So zooming in reveals these hidden patterns, how our childhood environment, our local community, even the political climate when we turn 18, can shape our lives in ways national averages completely obscure. It's about the local, the specific. Okay, we've covered reimagining data, the truth serum effect, and zooming in. Now for the fourth power, using big data for experiments, especially to understand causation, moving from what to why.
Yes, this is a huge step forward. Traditionally, establishing clear cause and effect in social science is really hard. But big data enables massive, rapid, controlled experiments, online A/B testing.
Google is a pioneer here, right?
Absolutely. Way back in 2000, they tested showing 10 versus 20 search links. How did they know which was better? They measured if users came back to Google sooner after seeing one version versus the other, a proxy for satisfaction.
Simple, but powerful. And scalable.
Hugely scalable and cheap. Google now runs something like 7,000 A/B tests a year, constantly tweaking things based on real user behavior, not just guesses.
And this isn't just for tech giants. The Obama campaign used A/B testing to raise serious money.
They famously tested everything on their donation homepage. Different pictures of Obama with family, speaking, formal portrait, different button text, sign up, Join us now. Learn more.
And what one?
The picture of Obama with his family paired with the Learn More button. That combination got 40% more email signups. And those signups translated into an estimated extra $60 million in donations.
Wow. Proof that intuition isn't always right, and testing pays off.
Massively. It showed human response is often unpredictable. The best approach is often just to test literally everything, even tiny things. Google found that adding little arrows next to some search results significantly increased clicks and revenue. But they had to test dozens of designs, stars, different positions, weird fonts. Most failed. You just have to test.
It highlights how much we don't know until we test. But sometimes we don't even need to run the experiment ourselves, right? Nature provides natural experiments.
Exactly. These are situations where something happens in the world almost randomly, creating comparison groups for us, like the study on assassinations.
How did they study that?
Economists Jones and Olkin compared countries where a leader was successfully assassinated, like JFK, with countries where there was a near-miss attempt, like Reagan or Hitler.
Kind of like an A/B test created by history.
Sort of, yeah. And the finding was stark. Successful assassinations do dramatically change history. New leaders took countries in entirely different directions, war versus peace, boom versus bust. It really challenged the idea that leaders are just figureheads pushed by larger forces. Individuals matter.
That's a profound finding from a grim natural experiment. What about doctors and money? Does getting paid more for a procedure make them do it more often?
Another clever natural experiment looked at this. Medicare reimbursement rates sometimes change arbitrarily in certain areas, but not others. Clemens and Gottlieb tracked this.
And what happened when doctors' fees went up for, say, cataract surgery in one county?
They did significantly more cataract surgeries in that county. Same for colonoscopies, MRIs. When pay went up for a specific procedure, doctors ordered more of it, even if it wasn't necessarily the most critical thing for the patient at that moment.
So financial incentives do influence medical decisions, at least for less urgent procedures.
The data strongly suggests they do. Obviously, for life-saving stuff, money isn't the driver. But for more elective things, pay rates clearly play a role.
Okay, now for one of the most counterintuitive findings. Violent movies and crime. The common sense idea is they cause more crime, right?
That's the assumption. Copycat crimes after A Clockwork Orange, riots after Colors. Anecdotes point that way. But economists Dahl and Della Vigna did a massive big data study.
What did they combine?
FBI hourly crime data across the U.S., box office results for movies each weekend, and ratings of how violent those movies were. They compared crime rates on weekends with popular violent movies versus weekends with popular non-violent movies.
And the result was?
Crime dropped on weekends with popular violent movies, significantly.
Wait, dropped? That sounds completely wrong. Your first instinct must be you messed up the analysis.
That's exactly what they thought. They rechecked everything, weather, time of year, holidays. The finding held. Crime went down when violent movies were hits.
So, why? What was the explanation?
The aha moment came from the hourly data. They saw crime was lower even before the movie started, when people were just going into the theater.
So the act of going to the movie was key.
Yes. Popular violent movies disproportionately attract young men, the demographic most likely to commit crimes. By putting them in a theater seat for a few hours, the movie effectively takes them off the streets during peak crime times.
Incapacitation by entertainment.
Basically, yes. And there was another piece. Alcohol. Crime remained lower even late at night after the movie. Why? Movie theaters don't serve alcohol.
Huh. So instead of being out drinking,
which is highly correlated with late-night assaults and other crimes, these young men were in the theater sober, so alcohol-related crime plummeted.
So the immediate effect of a popular violent movie is actually less crime due to keeping potential offenders occupied and sober?
That's what this large-scale data analysis strongly suggests. Now, it doesn't say anything about long-term effects of media violence, but the immediate impact was the opposite of what everyone assumed. A truly stunning, counterintuitive finding unlocked by big data.
These examples really show the power of experiments, whether designed or natural, to get at causality, to understand the why behind the patterns. It's a huge leap beyond just correlation.
Okay, this has been fascinating, exploring the powers of big data, but we absolutely need to talk about the limitations and the ethical concerns, because they are significant. One big technical issue is the curse of dimensionality.
Right. This is a really important statistical trap. When you have data sets with tons and tons of variables dimensions, you're almost guaranteed to find correlations just by pure random chance.
Like finding a lucky coin that seems to predict the stock market.
Exactly the analogy the author uses. If you flip the 1,000 different coins every day for years and track the S&P 500, probability dictates one of those coins will appear to correlate really well with the market, maybe 70% of the time, just by luck. But it's meaningless. Spurious.
Totally spurious. It won't hold up if you test it on new data out of sample testing. This is a huge risk in big data analysis, finding patterns that look real but are just noise because you tested so many possibilities.
We saw this with that tweet-based hedge fund that failed spectacularly.
Classic example. They claimed they could predict the market based on the calmness of tweets. But they'd likely tested countless emotions, time lags, and variables against limited market data. Found a fluke correlation, built a fund on it, and it collapsed. Same thing happens in genetics. Early claims about specific genes predicting IQ often turned out to be false positives from testing millions of variants.
So the lesson is, be incredibly skeptical of surprising correlations found in massive data sets. Demand validation.
Absolutely. You need rigorous testing on separate data, and you need to account for how many things you tested initially. Humility is key.
Another danger is becoming obsessed with what's easily measurable, right? Losing sight of the bigger picture.
Yes, the danger of overemphasizing measurability. Numbers are seductive. You start optimizing for the metric, not the actual goal. The author tells the story of Zoe Chance and her pedometer.
Hitting 20,000 steps a day.
Yeah, she became obsessed, walking in circles, putting the pedometer on her kid. She completely lost sight of why she was exercising for health, for well-being. She just focused on the number.
It sounds like the teaching to the test problem in education.
Exactly the same principle. We focus on standardized test scores because they're easy to measure. But does that capture critical thinking, curiosity, resilience? Often not. And focusing only on the score can lead to narrow teaching or even cheating.
Even companies like Facebook struggle with this.
Definitely. It's easy for them to measure likes, clicks, shares. Much harder to measure if users are having a genuinely good experience, feeling connected, or being well-informed versus misinformed. They know this, so they supplement their big data with small data surveys, interviews, hiring social scientists to try and get the full picture beyond the easily quantifiable metrics.
That makes sense. Now let's turn to this really thorny ethical issues. How can better prediction lead to subtle discrimination?
This is a huge concern, especially in areas like hiring. Companies now routinely scrape social media profiles. Okay, maybe checking for obvious red flags is one thing, but what if their algorithms find that, say, liking Harley-Davidson motorcycles statistically correlates with lower performance reviews in their company?
Even if there's no logical connection.
Even if it's just a weird statistical correlation in their data, could they start implicitly screening out Harley fans, using it as a proxy for some other trait without ever saying so? It opens the door to these esoteric yet intrusive judgments based on proxies that might seem harmless but function discriminatorily.
And it's harder to challenge because it's hidden in an algorithm.
Exactly. And it's not just hiring. Think about price discrimination.
Charging different people different prices for the same thing.
Yeah. Airlines and insurance companies have done versions of this for years. But big data lets companies get incredibly precise, building a digital doppelganger of you to predict the absolute maximum price you're likely willing to pay.
Which feels different when it's for booking a flight versus, say, predicting cancer risk.
Right. Using data science to find the next superstar athlete or diagnose disease feels beneficial. Cool. Using it to squeeze every last dollar out of a consumer feels less cool. Casinos are experts at this, using data to maximize long-term losses from gamblers. Even timing comps, like free steak dinners to keep them playing just when they might quit.
Okay, that leads to maybe the most difficult ethical line. Predicting individual behavior, especially crime. We know aggregate searches correlate with aggregate crime rates.
Yes, if searches for kill Muslims spike in a city, the risk of an attack on a mosque in that city might indeed go up. But predicting which individual will commit a crime based on their searches, that's vastly different and ethically fraught.
Why is the individual level so problematic?
Because the base rates are so different. Millions might search for suicidal, but thankfully far fewer actually attempt suicide. Thousands might search kill Muslims, but actual hate crime murders are rare. The vast, vast majority of people searching these terms will never act on them.
So intervening based on an individual search history is likely to ensnare huge numbers of innocent people.
Hugely inaccurate and invasive. If searches for kill Muslims go up fivefold, the risk to a mosque might jump from, say, 2% to 10%. The right response is protect the mosque. But the chance of any one person who made that search actually attacking is still vanishingly small, maybe 1 in 10,000. Acting against the individual searcher based on that probability is scientifically unsound and ethically unacceptable right now.
That's a critical distinction. Focus on protecting potential targets based on aggregate risk, not on punishing individuals based on unreliable predictions from their private thoughts or searches.
Precisely. Maybe future data and methods will get better, but for now, the predictive power at the individual level just isn't there to justify overriding privacy and presumption of innocence based on search data alone.
We've really covered a lot of ground. This deep dive shows how big data is just fundamentally changing how we see ourselves, our society. It's, like you said, our era's microscope and telescope, showing us truths, sometimes uncomfortable ones we just couldn't see before.
And it feels like we're still just scratching the surface. The author really emphasizes that these massive data sets are still barely explored. Most researchers are still catching up to this data explosion.
So, what kinds of discoveries might be coming?
Imagine having complete, detailed child growth charts for millions of kids, catching subtle developmental issues much earlier. Or truly understanding what educational approaches work best through massive A/B testing of lesson plans. Interestingly, some early results show fancy educational games can actually be less effective than standard methods for certain topics.
Fascinating. What else?
Understanding how ideas and language spread, how words emerge and die out, how jokes travel, the nuances of dialects, deeper insights into human sexuality, its dimensions, where preferences come from. Health, sleep patterns, jawbone data already revealed interesting insights into bedtime goals. The potential is enormous.
So after exploring all this, what's the main takeaway for you listening right now? I think it's that the world and human nature is far more complex, surprising, and maybe even stranger than our gut feelings tell us.
Absolutely. There are hidden patterns, hidden truths all around us, embedded in the digital trails we leave. These truths often challenge our neat assumptions about why people do what they do.
So the next time you type something into Google or like a post on social media, maybe pause for a second. Remember that invisible data and what it collectively might be revealing about who we really are, warts and all.
And perhaps the most exciting thought is simply this. The revolution is nowhere near over. It's just beginning. What other profound secrets about ourselves and our world are lying dormant in that ocean of data, just waiting for the right questions to be asked? And how will uncovering those secrets continue to change everything,